AskReddit by Mermaids and Dragons. People who aren't from America, what is something you find weird that America considers normal? Pharmaceutical adverts. I can surely say as American it's hella annoying. The amount of commercial breaks in a TV show. It's so bad. Can't even pay for streaming services to escape the ads. No decent maternity-paternity leave. It's horrific American parents have to return to work so quickly after birth. In Sweden most children stay at home with one of the parents until they are at least 1 year old, sometimes 2. Beauty pageants, particularly for children like WTF? We don't understand that either. Putting corn syrup in everything. I met a guy recently who is allergic to corn syrup. Man, he picked the wrong country to be born in. Tipping culture. Strictly optional or non-existent elsewhere. It accelerated in the US in part because of income tax law initially. Tips were legally characterized as gifts rather than income. Subsequent cases changed this, so there was a tax advantage for employers to encourage this and pay lower base wages. Paying employees a commensurate wage directly would have necessitated raising prices enough to cover both the new expense and the employer's added income tax. Job security. That employers can fire you anytime and you must leave immediately. This is a significant one. Everyone knows about guns and lack of universal health care, but many outside America don't realize the extent to which workers lack rights. The destruction of trade unions since Reagan interacts with it, of course. It's also interesting that many Americans now think of it as sort of a law of nature. Of course, right-wing politicians want to move towards this elsewhere. A question, as I understand it, an employer can sack someone for no reason, but if they sack the employee for a bad reason like race, gender, etc., they may be sued. Deleted. As an American, I don't get it either. So we have a program that's free health insurance and will cover most things, but it's literally frowned upon if you use it. You can't just go to a doctor because you're sick. If you have the free program, you have to make sure the doctor accepts your insurance, and then they can literally just refuse to see you because they don't want to deal with the insurance company. There's a huge notion here that if you have the free healthcare, you're seen as leeching of the government and you're a bad person if you rely on it. My thing is, if you're going to take taxes out of paycheck to literally pay for programs like this, shouldn't it be something we're entitled to use? Here, have this free thing that you're actually paying for, but we're not going to treat you like a human being if you use it. Is it true that pregnant women have to work basically right up to the delivery? If yes, then that. Where I live it's illegal to make them work 8 weeks before the scheduled delivery date. It is true. I had to exhaust all my sick and personal leave because, even as a teacher, we have no maternity leave. Having a car being practically required to live. Having 2 cars. The fact that your biggest personal debt is for education and healthcare. These should be universally free. It shouldn't be a choice to remain poor because you can't afford an education and to die rather than to take on a mountain of debt that you'll never recover from. They, greedy corporations, have to keep us sick and hungry to keep us working as long as possible, until we become a liability. Then we can just die, please. That there need to be school shooting drills. In most countries the reaction to a shooting in a school has been shit. This is awful. Let's do some big reforms to gun ownership to try and stop it happening again. In the US the reaction always seems to be a collective shrug. Any suggestion of trying to make it better are dismissed as impossible or unpatriotic. The Pledge of Allegiance before classes, guns, the fact that since cities are built a certain way most people don't walk, the fast food SOMG. In Texas public schools, we say a pledge to the Texas flag after the pledge to the American flag. I didn't know this wasn't normal until I was in my 30s. Most states don't even have a pledge of allegiance to their flag, but of the 18 that do, Texas is the only one whose residents recite it. Most of what I remember from my middle school French lessons is how to say the Texas pledge in French. ETA, Oklahomans are reporting that they recite theirs. So many things. Gun culture and availability, non-free healthcare, non-walkable cities, non-metric systems for distances and weight, taxes not being included in the price tags, having to fill out your own taxes, just to name a few off the top of my head. American here. We do use the metric system sometimes. My science classes in school from around age 12 and up use the metric system. And some sports use it, running, rowing. Full adults not being allowed to buy alcohol. Yeah, at 18 you can buy a gun but not a beer. Considering Donald Trump as a potential presidential candidate, it's hilarious to see from outside us. Honestly, when he ran the first time, I thought it was a joke, like some type of stupid publicity stunt lol. You write your dates backward egg to the rest of the world. Every time you talk about it, we would think that 9/11 happened in November. Not paying halfway decent wages and then insisting that servers earn tips to exist. Not having the money to even go see a doctor when needed. An almost godlike worship of military personnel. They get in free everywhere, you thank them for their service like they're not paid for it anyway too. Sports games taking hours because they are just full of short breaks. Your interstate is made of concrete blocks instead of tarmac. For hundreds of miles it's all clunk clunk, clunk clunk. Drove me nuts to drive on. It's already been said, but for me, it's the Pledge of Allegiance. Feels like something only dictatorships would do, and for every person I've had tell me that you didn't have to do it, I can recall at least as many people saying they refused to do it and got in trouble, etc. Blaring pixelating the middle finger when someone flips the bird on TV. Oath of allegiance. Flags everywhere. It's almost as if us Americans are afraid they'll forget in which country they are in, unless there is a US flag within sight. The almost competitive nature of religion. It seems less about believing in your particular deity and more about showing how much you believe in them. Almost like a spectator sport. When I was in elementary school, we had to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, daily. Hand over heart, looking at the flag. It was very much a meaningless ritual. We never learned why we were doing it. We just did it. That stopped when I got to high school. Again, no explanation. And I never really noticed that we didn't do it anymore. It was a thing, then it wasn't a thing. Huge portions. Medical bankruptcy. Telling your life story to strangers. Wearing white tennis shoes with everything. Paying bizarre prices for tuition. How many times are people going to ask this and get an entire thread of the same answers? Tipping, gun culture, non-walkable cities, etc. How Americans think they are the only free country in the world lol. The propaganda is persistent. The richest 1% want the freedom to fuck everyone else without interference, and most of the 99% support that and will yell freedom as they bend over and grab their ankles. Putting infants in daycare and going back to work full-time a few weeks after giving birth. Purity culture.